Alright, so this is part 2 of my How to Play Yu-Gi-Oh! Series of videos for beginners. This video is covering monster cards, and I'd like to start off by discussing the stats on monster cards. So, there's a few things that you have to take notice of. So, the first one is down here. There's an attack value and a defense value. So these are usually irrelevant in battle, though they come up at certain other points with certain card effects. They can be in attack position, which is represented as being straight up like this, or defense position, which is represented as being sideways. You can have it facing either direction, that's not important. Each monster will also have an attribute up here. Hanzo happens to be dark, and they'll have a type down here. Hanzo happens to be a warrior. So there are 6 different attributes. There's dark, light, earth, wind, fire, and water. And there's a lot more types. I'm not going to bother listing off all of them because there's quite a few. Attribute and type become relevant for certain card effects. All monsters will also have a level, except Exceed monsters, which have a rank instead. All levels range between 1 and 12. The level of a monster is mostly relevant for normal summoning, as well as summoning monsters from your extra deck. And the last thing I'd like to bring up is the name. One important thing to take note of with names is archetypes. So some monsters will have this same part for part of their name. So for example, Hanzo is a ninja. There are other monsters that have ninja in their name, and that's considered the ninja archetype. I have some other examples of archetypes. Here we have wind-ups. So both wind-up magician and wind-up rabbit have wind-up in their name. And here we have Raiko, the Lightsworn Hunter, and Lila, the Lightsworn Sorceress. So they both have Lightsworn in their name. These archetypes are relevant for certain card effects, and usually archetypes are designed to work well together. So a lot of people will use multiple cards within an archetype in their deck. So to get on the field, you either have to summon a monster or set it. And there are 2 ways in which you can summon a monster. The first is your normal summon. So you have 1 normal summon per turn. You can choose to normal summon the monster in attack mode, or to set it in defense mode. Setting is not considered a summon. On your following turn, you can choose to flip summon a set monster, which is considered a summon. While a set does count as your normal summon for the turn, a flip summon does not count as that turn's normal summon. For monsters that are level 4 and lower, you do not need any tributes to normal summon. However, if you're normal summoning a level 5 monster or a level 6 monster, you will need to tribute 1 monster to normal summon it. And if you're summoning a level 7 or higher, then you will need 2 tributes to normal summon it. So anything from level 7 to 12 would require 2 tributes to normal summon. The other way of summoning monsters that I mentioned is special summoning. Cards will explain on them how they either special summon themselves or allow you to special summon another card. So some cards will have a condition that allows them to be special summoned. For example, Cyber Dragon. If your opponent controls monsters while you control no monsters, you can special summon a Cyber Dragon from your hand. Some monsters will have something allowing you to trigger their summon. For example, Gores. When you take battle damage while you control no cards on your side of the field, you can special summon a Gores from your hand. And some cards will allow you to special summon other cards. For example, if a Mystic Tomato gets destroyed by battle and sent to your graveyard, you can special summon a dark monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck in attack mode. There are also a lot of spell and trap cards that will allow you to special summon monsters. How you can special summon monsters and which monsters you're allowed to special summon varies very much between cards, so I can't get into too much detail with examples. If all 5 monster card zones are full, then at this point you are unable to perform a normal summon or a special summon because you don't have any zones to place the monsters into. However, you are able to normal or special summon monsters if it involves removing monsters from the field. For example, if you are going to tribute summon a level 7 monster, you are allowed to tribute 2 monsters to normal summon the Gores, because tributing the 2 monsters makes space on the field to play Gores. Similarly, if you decide to Synchro or Exceed summon, both of these game mechanics remove monsters from the field. For example, you could Synchro using these 2 to summon Stardust, or you could Exceed summon using these 2 to summon Castel. You can do both of these because, once again, you're clearing up board space in order to perform the summon. Similarly, you can perform fusion summons or ritual summons using monsters in the field as cost. Synchro summoning, Exceed summoning, fusion summoning, and ritual summoning will all be explained in detail in further videos. So, most monster cards have effects, at least most monster cards that see play, and there are a few different types of card effects. The first one I want to explain is trigger effects. So both of these are examples of trigger effects. Basically, trigger effects are effects that activate when something happens. So for example, Hanzo has an effect that activates when it is normal summoned, and Doom Caliber Knight has an effect that activates whenever a different monster effect activates. Some of these effects can be optional and some of them can be mandatory. For example, Hanzo's effect is optional, so you can choose whether or not you want to activate it. And Doom Caliber's effect is mandatory, so you have to activate it when it is triggered. A variation on the trigger effect is the flip effect. So these cards will say flip right there, which separates them from other trigger effects. In most respects, these function the same way as trigger effects. These effects will activate whenever the monster is flipped from face down to face up. So this can happen in 2 ways primarily. So usually this will happen when your monster is attacked while face down, which will cause it to flip face up, or you decide to flip summon the monster during your main phase. There are some trigger effects that will activate when the monster is flipped face up. However, they're not considered flip effects. If you see here, it does not say flip at the beginning of Fossil Dyna's effect. However, it has the same trigger to activate its effect. At least its second effect, because Fossil Dyna happens to have 2 effects. The next type of effect that I would like to go over is ignition effects. So these are both examples of monsters with ignition effects. Ignition effects are effects that you manually activate during your main phase. So for both of these cards, while they're face up on the field, you can activate their effects during the main phase. Lila has 2 effects, I should note, but the first one is an ignition effect. So you will target one of your opponent's spell and trap cards, destroy it, and switch Lila to defense mode. Ignition effects usually have something limiting their use, so you can't use them over and over again. Lila has to switch from attack to defense mode, so you can only use it once per turn because it will be in defense mode afterwards. Dark Arm Dragon, you can target one of your opponent's cards, banish a dark monster in your graveyard, and then destroy the card you targeted. So this is limited by the fact that you only have a limited number of dark monsters in your graveyard. Ignition effect will usually be indicated by saying something like once per turn or during your main phase, a phrase something like that. The next effects I want to talk about are continuous effects. So these are 2 examples of monsters with continuous effects. In addition to its trigger effect, Fossil Dyna also has a continuous effect. So continuous effects are active as soon as the monsters hit the field, and they stay active as long as the monsters are on the field and there's no other cards disrupting them. So, for example, Fossil Dyna prevents any monsters from being special summoned, and Jinzo negates the effects of all trap cards. These effects do not activate, unlike the other effects, and this is obvious from the problem-solving card text on these, which is a concept I'll explain in a later video. The last type of card effect is quick effects. So these are both examples of monsters with quick effects. Quick effects can be activated on either player's turn, and they're treated kind of like trap cards, in which case you can chain them to other card effects. These are the same spell speed as trap cards, so it helps from a beginner standpoint to kind of think of these as being similar to that. So these will be indicated by saying during either player's turn. As far as I know, all quick effects will say this. And these can activate in different locations. For example, Wind Up Rabbit has a quick effect that activates while it's on the field. And DD Crow is a quick effect that you activate while it's in your hand. So the next thing I want to go over is battle. So in battle, which happens only during the battle phase, you get to choose to attack with your monsters. You can only attack with monsters that are in attack mode. And you can choose to attack any monsters your opponent controls. If they don't control any monsters, you can choose to attack directly. Usually you can't attack directly if they control monsters. However, there are certain card effects that will let you. So when a monster declares an attack, you will use their attack value, and you'll compare it to your opponent's either attack value or defense value, depending on which position they're in. So if Lila would attack into a defense position Wind Up Magician, Magician has higher defense than Lila's attack. So in this situation, the player using Lila would take the difference in damage, and neither monster would be destroyed. If the monster attacking had the same attack value as Magician's defense, so 1800 and 1800, then nothing would happen. Neither player would take any battle damage, and neither monster would be destroyed. Finally, if the monster attacking had more attack than Magician's defense, Goris has 2700, the Magician would be destroyed, and neither player would take any battle damage. Now, if both monsters were in attack mode, if they happened to have the same attack, 1700 and 1700, then both monsters would be destroyed, and neither player would take any battle damage. If you attacked a monster with more attack, then your monster would be destroyed, and you would take battle damage equal to the difference in attack. The opposite would happen if you decided to attack a monster that had less attack than you. So Magician only has 600 attack. So if Lila would attack the Magician, the player with Magician would take damage equal to the difference, and Magician would be destroyed. If your opponent controls no monsters, then your monster can attack directly. When doing so, you simply look at your monster's attack and subtract that amount from your opponent's life points. I would like to take note of a couple peculiar things that can happen in battle. So if both monsters in battle have 0 attack, for example, Vader has 0 and Valor has 0, if you attacked one with the other, neither would be destroyed, even though they have the same attack value. The other thing that I would like to take note of is replays. So if in the battle phase you declare an attack with Lila, say onto Wind Up Rabbit over here, your opponent can activate the effect of Wind Up Rabbit because it's a quick effect, and this would remove Wind Up Rabbit from the field. So in this situation, the monster you attack is no longer on the field. This causes a replay. So a replay occurs whenever the monsters on your opponent's side of the field changes when you're declaring an attack. So this can include removing monsters from the field, such as Wind Up Rabbit in this example, or adding monsters to the field due to special summons. When this happens, you have a few options. You can choose to redeclare an attack. So if your opponent has another monster, you can choose to attack that. If your opponent, say, has more than one monster still in the field, you can choose to attack either. And if your opponent would have no monsters in the field at this point, you can choose to attack directly. Alternatively, if you do no longer wish to attack, you can stop attacking. If you choose to stop attacking during the replay, your monster is still treated as having declared an attack that turn. So, when you decide you want to switch battle positions between attack mode and defense mode, there are a few stipulations on this. You can only switch battle positions of a monster once per turn, either from defense to attack, or the other way from attack to defense. You can also not switch battle positions in the turn the monster is summoned. You also cannot switch a monster from attack mode to defense mode if it previously attacked that turn. This includes if you decided not to attack during a replay. The last topic I want to cover is monster tokens. So certain cards like Dandelion will allow you to summon tokens. Tokens have a few special rules applied to them. Tokens are very much like monsters, but they're a little bit different. So cards that summon tokens will say on the cards the stats of the tokens. So the tokens that this summons are Plant, Wind, level 1 with 0 attack and 0 defense. It'll also indicate if they have to be summoned in either attack position or defense position. Sometimes you have the option to choose either. Tokens can be represented by anything. A lot of people will use token cards. Tokens, unless otherwise stated, can be used for synchro summons or tribute summons, but they cannot be used for exit summons. Tokens are also not sent to the grave when they're destroyed. They simply vanish from the field. In most other respects, they're treated just as other monsters are. It's also worth noting that most tokens happen to be normal monsters because they do not have any card effects. That's it for my video on the monsters. My next video, I will be covering extra deck monsters.